Hello, your channel Eugene Light Novels greets you. I hope you are enjoying these beautiful novels. Now, let's continue with the novel, Everyone's Job Change, I Am the Lord of Chaos. First part. Chapter 1. The Traveler from the Medieval Warhammer. The world begins to fall apart. In the end, the outcome was still not reversed. SGW, why do you write E.T.? Hundreds of years ago, Leslie Chung traveled to the medieval Warhammer with the Total War system. Because before time travel, I was playing the Chaos Warriors of Hammer 3. Therefore, he became a Chaos Lord. Of course, traveling through time and becoming a Chaos Lord does not mean that I will listen to the four gods. After all, he is a time traveler with a full combat system. He is not under the direct control of the four gods and can act on his own subjective consciousness. Whoever fights and who helps depends mainly on interests. And over the past few hundred years, we have also encountered other time travelers with full combat systems. Counting Yuxuan Zhang, there are 12 in total. 2 of them unfortunately died in the medieval Warhammer world. The remaining 10 people successfully survived to ET. And when ET arrives, all travelers choose to stand on the side of order. However, various preparation plans were forcibly revised by the worldview. For example, they rushed to the cell where Bald Man was imprisoned in advance and killed Bald Man. His body was crushed to ashes, and his soul was wiped out by him. In the end, Galt was still killed, but the person who stabbed Galt turned into a changeling spirit disguised as a Rick guard. In the end, 3 time travelers who were already 4th level mages forcibly bound the almost out-of-control Beast Wind, Flame Wind, and Metal Wind to themselves to stabilize the 8 winds and advance the ceremony. As a result, the 4 gods of TNND cheated and directly launched thousands of big demons in a surprise attack. There are even big demons in it that are supposed to appear only in AOS and 40k. Forcibly ruined the ceremony. In the end, the world was still destroyed. Let's go. I'll see you again later, buddies. Everyone, take care. Brothers, don't die. 10 time travelers came together to say their final goodbyes. After all, everyone has a final escape plan. As for whether it can succeed, that is another matter. Brothers who have been friends and foes for hundreds of years, I don't know when we will meet next. I'll leave first. After Zhang Yuxuan finished speaking, he walked into the portal and returned to the faction capital, Twilight Castle. Zhang Yuxuan came to the throne of Twilight Castle, while his subordinates stood on both sides, saying nothing. He was about to say something, but still didn't say anything. The transmission ceremony is ready, my lord. A warlock reported to him, and he nodded. His escape plan is to teleport himself and his army to other worlds. As for the probability of success, he himself doesn't know. But it is better than waiting to die in this world that is about to be destroyed. Although the 4 gods promised that as long as he accepted their blessings, he could survive. But he refused, he didn't want to go to AOS. Finally, Henry Zhang closed his eyes and gave the order. Transmission ceremony. Start. 18 years have passed. Zhang Yuxuan was sitting in a classroom, dozing off. The transmission ceremony 18 years ago brought him to this world alone. His city and his army were also missing. And, he became a baby in an orphanage. I went through it again from elementary school to high school. But, at least I survived. And he still inherited part of his strength in the medieval Warhammer world. I'm going to change jobs in our class soon. I'm really looking forward to it. Become a cow horse or ride a cow horse, today. His classmates were whispering to each other in the classroom. As for the head teacher asking everyone to study quietly before leaving? Forgot long ago. As for changing jobs, this is a feature of Blue Star in this parallel world. 100 years ago, the world underwent a sudden change and many supernatural phenomena appeared. Various supernatural secrets and supernatural beasts. And people are beginning to become awakened. Awakened people will have 2 awakening items. The first one is career. For example, duelist, spellcaster, etc. There are good and bad. Of course, it is different from many time travel novels that Zhang Yuxuan read in his previous life. In this world, the profession a person awakens to is not necessarily the profession you will become. In other words, profession is a bonus, and it does not force you to only be in this profession. For example, you awaken craftsman, but you are talented and good at melee combat. Is it possible to become a warrior simply by exercising on your own? It's possible, in theory. That depends on your talent. And the second awakening project is race. This is not to say that there are other races besides humans in this world. Instead, a transmission channel appeared between Blue Star and another world. The awakened ones of Blue Star can travel between two worlds. That world is called the Inner World by Blue Star. The other world is a medieval world with many fantasy races. Any awakened person will become his own awakened race after being transported to the other world. There are good and bad aspects. Some of the things the awakened ones obtain in the other world can be brought back to Blue Star. Chapter 2 Negative Teaching Materials. Every year during the senior year of high school, an awakening ceremony is held across the country, a process that usually lasts about 2 days. Even during this time, students in classes that don't have their turn can't simply stay home and relax. They can only choose to study by themselves in the classroom to maintain their learning status. As one of them, Zhang Yuxuan chose to lie down on the table and take a nap during the awakening ceremony. Even in his sleep, he can still be keenly aware of changes in the surrounding environment. For example, right now, he feels like someone with malicious intentions is approaching him. Zhang Yuxuan raised his head and looked at the person approaching him. "Hey, isn't this squad leader Sun?" "What's the matter?" he asked, with a bit of casualness in his voice. Sun Bowen, as the monitor of Class 6, has always been a good student with excellent academic performance. He is completely different from Zhang Yuxuan, who is almost always used as a negative teaching material by teachers to educate other students. Zhang Yuxuan's academic performance is not ideal, and he is often lazy. What's more, his tendency to do parallel jogs gave him a bad reputation among his classmates. According to Zhang Yuxuan's classmates, even when buying a bottle of soda at the canteen, you can meet several people who have studied foreign languages with Zhang Yuxuan. Although Yuxuan Zhang has never been formally punished by the school, his behavior has aroused dissatisfaction and disgust among his classmates. As for why Sun Bowen is hostile to Zhang Yuxuan himself does not know, and he does not want to explore the reasons. "It's a mule or a horse. I'll take it out for a run today, Yuxuan Zhang." "That's right, after all, our squad leader is so good, he will definitely be able to awaken a good career." Zhang Yuxuan responded, with a joking expression on his face, and at the same time gave Sun Bowen, "Cheer up. You." Just as Sun Bowen opened his mouth to speak, a loud noise suddenly came into the classroom. The students ran out curiously to check the situation. "What's going on?" "I don't know, did something happen?" "I think something important may have happened to make such a loud noise." "Listening to your words is worth 10 years of reading," another classmate echoed. But Zhang Yuxuan immediately heard the source of the sound. That sound was the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground. Someone jumped off the building. Throughout the teaching building, those students who had not participated in the awakening ceremony poured out of the classroom and curiously poked their heads out to find out. However, they were quickly rushed back to their classrooms by their teachers. "What's going on? What happened?" "I don't know. Did something big happen? I heard that someone jumped off the building, is it true?" "Yes, I saw it too, it's Wen Yuan from Class 1. "What? That super university tyrant Wen Yuan? How could he jump off the building?" "I heard it's because the profession he awakened is so bad. He's a chef, and his race is goblin. This is too bad, but he won't jump off the building because of it. He studies so well and should be able to get into a good university." Several classmates gathered around and started talking in low voices, with expressions of shock and regret on their faces. Henry Zhang walked over and couldn't help laughing while listening to the discussions among his classmates. "Brothers, think about it carefully. In theory, the best schools in the country do not require strong occupations to be admitted, but this is only in theory. In fact, how many years have they not accepted candidates with weak occupations, he said. A classmate thought for a while and asked a question. But isn't it okay for him to be a special student? Zhang Yuxuan patted his shoulder and replied. Brother, look at the talented students in the past few years. Which one is not a true talent and has a good background? How many years can there be a talented student who was born from pure cows and horses? In this world, the gap between the high-level awakened family and ordinary people is like the difference between cloud and mud, which is insurmountable. Jackie Chung. Are you spreading negative energy again? A familiar voice scolded. Zhang Yuxuan looked back and saw that he was the monitor. I say monitor, you should worry more about yourself. He replied. At this time, the voice of the grade director came from outside the door. Classes 4, 5, and 6 assemble. Chapter 3 Awakening Ceremony. Awakening Ritual. On the playground of Jiangqing City No. 3 Middle School, classes 4, 5, and 6 of senior high school students were waiting for the ceremony to begin. Before the ceremony begins, the principal of No. 3 Middle School usually delivers a few brief speeches, followed by a few brief speeches by the grade director. After a period of time, the grade director announced that the ceremony officially began. Zhao Lei, awakened professional masseur, awakened racial halfling. Li Jie, awakening professional animal trainer, awakening race human. Xian Tang, awakening professional rangers, awakening racial demi-humans. Good cooperation, keep working hard in the future. Subsequently, Sun Bowen took the stage to perform the awakening ceremony. When the grade director saw the results of the awakening, he had an expression of surprise on his face. Sun Bowen, awakened professional rune craftsman, awakened racial dwarf. The voice from the podium aroused heated discussion among the students. Dwarves are famous for their excellent rune technology and are considered to be the race that is best at rune technology. Sun Bowen's profession perfectly matches his race, which makes people marvel. Sun Bowen walked down the podium with a smile on his face, but when passing by Zhang Yuxuan suddenly said something short. Sun Bowen was stunned for a moment, not understanding what this meant. Soon after, other students also completed the awakening ceremony. However, the awakening results of most students are quite ordinary, and some even have complete mismatches between occupation and race. One of the classmates' race was awakened as a dwarf, but his profession was a mage. In this world, dwarves usually have a very low affinity for magic, and they can usually only use magic indirectly through runes. The student repeatedly begged the school to give him a chance to awaken again on the podium, but was eventually forcibly taken off the podium by members of the student union. Next, Zhang Yuxuan. After hearing that he was called, Zhang Yuxuan stepped onto the podium. When the grade director saw him, he looked slightly unhappy. Although the grade director tried to catch him many times before, they all ended in failure. However, based on professional ethics, the grade director did not interfere in any way during the awakening ceremony. Please put your hands on it and close your eyes. Okay. Henry Zhang took a deep breath, and his heartbeat gradually accelerated. He gently placed his hand on the designated position, and then slowly closed his eyes. In the darkness, he felt a powerful and familiar force pouring into his body. His body began to heat up, as if a fire was burning inside him. In the eyes of his classmates and teachers, a ball of extremely turbid energy enveloped Yuxuan Zhang, making them feel frightened and uneasy. What is going on? One classmate exclaimed. I don't know, and it feels so scary. Another classmate echoed. The teachers on the rostrum also frowned. They watched the energy around Zhang Yuxuan getting stronger and stronger, and they couldn't help but feel a little worried. Soon, the energy began to dissipate, and Henry Zhang slowly opened his eyes. The grade director walked up to him and carefully checked the awakening results. Then he suddenly froze and almost spit out the water he just drank. Jackie Chung, awakened as a human race, awakened as a profession, is a lord. There was a hint of surprise and disbelief in the grade director's voice. After hearing the news, the students under the rostrum fell into dead silence. After a few seconds, a noisy discussion broke out. How could he awaken to such a profession? A classmate asked dissatisfiedly. That's right, Lord is the best profession out of 1,000. Another classmate agreed. How could he, AB************** D with no knowledge or skills, awaken to such a good career? Someone else questioned. But isn't he an awakened human? Humans and lords are not suitable. It is said that human lords are the weakest among all races. A classmate raised an objection. Think about it. Although human lords are the weakest among all races, they are still lords after all, another classmate explained. Chapter 4 Lord. Lord, as the most special existence among all professions in this world, its status and influence are unmatched by anyone. They often have less personal strength, but they have the ability to establish territories and recruit heroes and troops. One person can support an army and show amazing dominance. Among many professions, although high-level necromancers can single-handedly control a huge army of undead, their methods are too insidious, and their desecration of the dead is often disliked by others. Basically, people hate dogs. The lords are different. They rely on the soldiers, heroes, and lords they recruit for their strength. When lords enter the other world, they no longer have the freedom to explore and take risks like other professions. Instead, phased tasks will be released, which are generally semi-mandatory. Therefore, the lords' degree of freedom in the other world is relatively low, but their growth and progress are obvious. In this world, the reason why human lords are considered the weakest is inseparable from their special living environment and racial characteristics. The individual combat effectiveness of human beings is not only not bad among short-lived species, it is even relatively strong. However, compared with immortal species, human lifespan is much shorter, and the gap in combat effectiveness is very large. It is typical that the upper limit is too low in the later period. In addition, among the immortal species in the other world, their lifespans are not proportionally extended to those of humans. Take the ordinary elves in this world as an example. At the age of 30, the elf's body is fully mature. Until they are 600 or 700 years old, they are still young adults. Then, he will age rapidly and die of old age after more than 10 years. In addition to this world, the fertility rate of immortal species is not low. On average, a female elf will give birth to 1 or 2 children every 100 years. The same is true for other immortal species. The population of immortal species will not be particularly small. What if the later stage can't be used in the early stage? Nope either. In the early missions of the Lord, there are often situations where the mission is to spawn a group of Martian soldiers and attack the territory where the Lord is located. Most short-lived races can adopt a strong attack strategy and use human sea tactics to drown their opponents. The immortal race tends to use a small number of elite forces to defend its territory and defeat its enemies. So, what about the human lords? From a quantitative point of view, the human lord's military strength is often at a disadvantage and cannot be as powerful as other short-lived species. From a quality point of view, in terms of the combat effectiveness of the soldiers, the strength of the human regular army is not even as good as the militia of the immortal species, not to mention that the main force of the human lords in the early stage is often the militia. In the early stages, how many regular troops can a human lord have? This makes the human lords appear relatively fragile in the early stages, perform mediocre in the midterm, and have a relatively low upper limit of strength in the later stages. Therefore, human lords are generally considered to be the most vulnerable of all lords. Of course, the weakest lord is also a lord, and is much better than most professions. When Yuxuan Zhang's awakening was completed, he looked at the students in the audience with a very unsatisfied expression. An expression like, I, the negative teaching material of the whole school, have awakened to such a good profession, I hope everyone has awakened to it better than me. Many students in the audience were angry. Otherwise? Find someone to beat up Zhang Yuxuan. Many times before, some classmates found a group of gangsters outside the school and wanted to teach Yuxuan Zhang a lesson. Then he was beaten until Yuxuan Zhang, who was in a state of extreme tension, was beaten until his teeth were all over the floor. After all, even Leslie Chung before awakening still retained part of his strength in the medieval Warhammer world. Chapter 5 Legendary Lord. When Yuxuan Zhang returned to the team, the expressions of the students around him were either envious or jealous. But Zhang Yuxuan didn't care and just started to check the awakening panel. After all, the only panels that outsiders can see are the awakened races and professions. Leslie Chung, Legendary Chaos Warlock Lord, Level 1. Faction, Twilight Warring States, Faction Leader. Occupation, Mage, 3rd level Mage, can use Nurgle, Sench, and Slainish spells. Character characteristics. Spellcaster. Equipped with full body armor. Melee Expert. Counterstepping Master, main weapon is a two-handed sword. High probability armor-piercing unit. Active skills. None yet. Passive skills. Search for enemies, obtain information about all enemies within a certain range. Siege player, this character can be regarded as a siege unit. Inspire friendly forces, increase the morale of nearby friendly forces. Injured, seriously injured will reduce weapon skills and strength. Resilience, born with high resistance. Shock the enemy, scare nearby enemies. Champion killer, reduces the weapon skill of nearby enemies. Enchant weapons, weapons cause magical attacks. Immune to contact effects, immune to debuffs caused by weapons. Multiple prism, when casting, the CD of all skills is reduced by 10 seconds. Powerful arcane conductor. Hidden in the forest. Mark of Tsench, obtain magic screen and enchanted weapons on the battlefield. Mark of Corn, gain rage, spell resistance on the battlefield, increase a small amount of armor, increase a small amount of weapon skills, and reduce a small amount of reflexes. Mark of Nurgle, reduces a small amount of weapon skills on the battlefield, increases a small amount of reaction power, increases blood volume and toughness, and gains quenching attack. Mark of Slainish, gain psychological immunity, terrain adaptation, and deadly detour on the battlefield. Blessing of the Evil God, on the battlefield, one of the 4 blessings of the gods is randomly triggered, duration is 60 seconds, CD is 240 seconds, automatically triggered. One-hit kill, for non-lords, heroes, and rare behemoth units, damage will result in death, only in melee combat. Champion of Chaos, when an enemy unit within 50 meters challenges you to a duel, you cannot refuse. Faction Leader, unless the faction is destroyed, the character will not die, but will only be injured. Resistance, resistance is effective up to 90%. Special protection 20%. Physical resistance 20%. Spell resistance 20%. Fire resistance 20%. Available mounts. Chaos Warhorse, unlocked at level 4. Sench's Disc, unlocked at level 10. Chaos War Shrine, unlocked at level 16. Artifact. Armor of Enchantment, mission unlocked. Scowl's Kraken Killer, mission unlocked. Healing Necklace, mission unlocked. Ring of Destiny, mission unlocked. How should I put it? If it were shown to outsiders, they would think it was abnormal. Just woke up, a lot of passive. But in fact, it has been weakened a lot. Zhang Yuxuan checked the skill line again, and sure enough, there were a bunch of active and passive skills he had in the medieval Warhammer world that needed to be highlighted. The same goes for spells. Among the 3 spells, there are only 3 spells left that can be used. They are Plague Miasma, Slainish's Whip, and Tsench's Blue Flame. A dignified 3rd level mage can only use 3 kinds of spells now, which is so miserable. As for his melee combat strength, he felt that his current weapon skills can be understood as melee hits, and reflexes can be understood as melee dodges, were at the level of a Chaos Warrior Lord. You know, when he and ACHA were singled out, he was only slightly inferior. Not strong enough, not strong enough. Why do you only retain so much strength? Of course, if his classmates found out that they disliked his initial strength, they would definitely call him Versailles. You know, among the 10,000 warrior professionals in this world, there may not be one whose combat effectiveness is stronger than the white version of the Chaos Warrior Lord. Chapter 6 Family. Chapter 6 Family. After the awakening ceremony was completed, it was time for school to end. When the school bell rang, Zhang Yuxuan packed his school bag and walked out of the school gate. Zhang Yuxuan's home is located in a high-end community, with an elegant environment and complete facilities. It's not that Zhang Yuxuan made any money, but that his adoptive parents who have passed away were relatively wealthy. After he graduated from elementary school, he was adopted by a couple. This community was a residence carefully selected by the adoptive parents during their lifetime. His adoptive parents were very kind to him, treating him as their own child and including his name in the family tree. In addition to him, the adoptive parents also have a biological daughter, Zhang Huilin. Originally, after Kelly Zhang was born, the adoptive parents looked forward to the joy of welcoming a new life with joy. They dreamed of having another child one day, growing up with Kelly Zhang and sharing the joy of family. However, fate always seems to like to play tricks. During an adventure, the couple was unfortunately infected with a rare virus. Although they temporarily suppressed the disease with their tenacious vitality, doctors told them that the virus had deprived them of the ability to have children again. Therefore, they adopted Zhang Yuxuan as their son. However, when Leslie Chung was 15 years old, his adoptive parents passed away and left a rich legacy, which should have been inherited by Yuxuan Zhang and Kelly Zhang. However, this inheritance caused a family dispute. Some relatives who rarely interacted with each other on weekdays came to the door one after another, trying to embezzle the inheritance by various means. They used coercion and inducement, and even threatened Zhang Huilin, in an attempt to make her give up her inheritance rights. These relatives only have interests in their eyes and greed in their hearts. Those greedy relatives have endless tricks and their schemes are unfathomable. They used their family's influence and colluded with external forces to suppress and exclude Zhang Yuxuan and Kelly Zhang. They saw that Kelly Zhang was only 15 years old and innocent, and thought she was easy to bully and could easily control her and her inheritance. After all, eating extremely well is a specialty of a certain type of people. Kelly Zhang looked humane when her parents were still alive, but immediately turned against her after her parents died. They used all kinds of means, coercion and inducement, and harassed Kelly Zhang in various ways, trying to make Kelly Zhang give in and make her voluntarily give up the inheritance rights of the property. However, what they never expected was that Zhang Yuxuan would become their nightmare. Although Zhang Yuxuan and Kelly Zhang are not related by blood, he is the son of adoptive parents, his name has been entered into the household registration, and he is the eldest son of this family. Legally, he has the same inheritance rights as Kelly Zhang. As long as Leslie Chung doesn't let go, he can't even think about transferring assets. However, these relatives are not easy to deal with. They hired some idle people from society to intimidate and threaten Zhang Yuxuan and Zhang Kelly. The relatives thought they could easily succeed, but they did not expect to encounter an opponent like Zhang Yuxuan. Because those social figures who were hired to intimidate them were directly given high-quality sleep by Zhang Yuxuan and were sent to the hospital for treatment. This completely frightened these relatives and neighbors. And Yuxuan Zhang's legal age was only 15 years old at that time. In the face of threats from adults, self-defense is a legitimate responsibility. Children should protect themselves outside. After all, his adoptive parents were kind to him, and he would take good care of Kelly Zhang no matter what they said. Chapter 7 Old Sister. I'm back. As soon as Zhang Yuxuan got home, he smelled the aroma of food. The aroma filled his nostrils, letting him know that there was only one possibility, that is, his sister came home before him and the meal was already ready. Sure enough, as soon as he entered the door, he saw Zhang Kelly's busy figure. She wore an apron outside and a black short skirt uniform underneath, with a tie tied neatly around her neck, looking capable and elegant. Her figure is well proportioned and her legs and arms are graceful, giving her a youthful and healthy look. Back, brother. Kelly Zhang saw Zhang Yuxuan coming in and said hello with a smile. She was still holding a spatula in her hand and was obviously cooking. Well, I'm back. Zhang Yuxuan responded, his eyes involuntarily attracted by the food in the kitchen. He walked to the dining table and sat down, looking at the dishes already placed on the table. I made your favorite braised pork and sweet and sour pork ribs today. Try them. Kelly Zhang brought the last dish to the table, then sat across from Henry Zhang and started eating. Henry Zhang took a bite of the braised pork, and the delicious taste made him couldn't help but close his eyes. He praised, "Sister, your skills are really getting better and better." Zhang Yuxuan has always liked braised pork very much. This has been his favorite since his previous life. However, in medieval Warhammer, he spent most of his time in the Chaos Wasteland. It would be nice to have relatively normal food, so don't be dissatisfied. Only when he visits his old friend's house in China can he eat authentic braised pork. Of course, his old friend from Cathay is also a time traveler, a high-ranking dragonborn general from heaven and the governor of Cathay in Nippon. Zhang Huilin listened with a satisfied smile on her face. She said, "That's because I have a good brother who has been encouraging me." Of course, in fact, after the death of his adoptive parents, Leslie Chung did not do any housework. Kelly Zhang did it. In addition to studying, Kelly Zhang also needs to face daily chores at home, such as laundry, cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, paying bills, etc. At home, apart from playing games and inviting others to discuss and learn foreign languages, Zhang Yuxuan rarely touches housework. And Kelly Zhang silently shouldered all the housework. But she never complained, because she knew that without her brother's help, she might have been driven out of the home by her greedy relatives. After finishing the meal, Kelly Zhang cleared the kitchen table, while Leslie Chung watched the TV news. "By the way, my brother didn't bring anyone else home today," Zhang Huilin said with a smile on her face. "I don't do this every day." Regarding Zhang Yuxuan's answer, she just sighed. She still knows what games and sports her brother plays. It wasn't that she was jealous of those people or looked down upon her brother's behavior. She was worried that her brother might catch something. Although her brother would say no, she was still worried. Different from his brother Zhang Yuxuan, Kelly Zhang is a typical, other people's child. Even in the school she attended, this name represented excellence and perfection. She has an enviable figure and outstanding appearance. And he is also a good student with comprehensive development of moral, intellectual, physical, artistic and physical skills. Her grades have always been among the best, and she was almost always among the top 5 in her grade in her school. She has a great figure, good looks, and is well developed morally, intellectually, physically, aesthetically, and physically. She has excellent grades and is in the top 5 in her school's grade. In stark contrast to Zhang Yuxuan, whose performance ranking is approximately equal to the number of students in his grade. Kelly Zhang is also friendly and always willing to help others. She is serious and rigorous about her studies and optimistic about life. He has good conduct, cleanses himself, and is a good student every year. She is a role model for her classmates. Chapter 8. Are you also a lord? After Zhang Huilin finished cleaning up the kitchen and dining table, she also came to the sofa and sat next to Zhang Yuxuan. She leaned gently on his shoulder, with a happy smile on her face. "Brother, I have good news for you," she said softly, her voice full of joy and expectation. "Sister, what's the good news?" Henry Zhang turned his head and looked at Kelly Zhang curiously, his eyes full of expectation and surprise. "I am the lord who has awakened. My race is elf," Zhang Huilin said excitedly, her eyes flashing with excitement, as if she had seen the glory of the future. "WC, are you also a lord?" After hearing this, Zhang Yuxuan was stunned for a moment, and then exclaimed. His voice was filled with shock. "Yes, brother, I am really the lord." Zhang Huilin smiled and nodded, her smile full of confidence and pride. How is this possible?" Zhang Yuxuan is numb, the lord is not a cabbage. There are 10 million high school seniors graduating in the country every year, and if only 500 of them can awaken as lords, it will be a big deal. Both members of this family are lords. Why, did Tsench give them a blessing? But there is no Tsench in this world. Kelly Zhang reacted immediately to Yuxuan Zhang's reaction. "Yeah? Is my brother also a lord?" Zhang Yuxuan nodded. "Human lord." After hearing this, Zhang Huilin hugged her brother's head happily. "Yeah, we're all a profession, yeah." After the excitement was over, my sister also started asking. Brother, which school do you plan to attend? Regarding this question, Kelly Zhang blurted it out without even thinking about it. Holy Magnolia Academy. Zhang Kelly was confused after hearing this. Is it the Holy Magnolia College of the 5 colleges of Xia Kingdom? Wait, she thought of a question. Isn't Magnolia College a girls' school? Hearing these words, Zhang Yuxuan almost choked on the water he drank. The awakened races that Holy Magnolia College mainly recruits are elves, succubi, subhumans, rabbits, and bird races. In this world, there are basically more boys and girls among these races, so there are relatively few awakened men from Blue Star. But it's not that there aren't any. There have always been a small number of male students in St. Magnolia College. How did it become rumored to be a girls' school? Zhang Huilin nodded, but she thought of something else. Brother wants to apply for St. Magnolia College. Isn't it because there are many boys and girls there? After Zhang Yuxuan heard this, he looked elsewhere. How is that possible? I have a very good reason. For example, does my brother's awakened human lord have any special bonuses? Special bonus? Zhang Yuxuan thought about it. It should refer to whether there is anything you are good at. After all, even lords of the same race are good at different things. My troops are better at hand-to-hand combat and magic. Then why doesn't my brother apply for the Duelist Academy? This school is an academy that specializes in training awakened warriors. Can they teach magic? Then you can go to the Supreme Academy of Magic. Can they teach hand-to-hand combat? I can't possibly go to 2 schools at the same time. Of course, these 2 reasons were only stated to Kelly Zhang. In fact, Zhang Yuxuan does not think that these 2 academies are equipped to teach chaos hand-to-hand combat and magic. It's pretty much the same if I teach them. Then why don't you apply for Xiagua University? This is a comprehensive university. Because the accommodation and food at St. Magnolia College are the best among all institutions, better than Xiagua University. Kelly Zhang didn't expect to have such a reason. Can it really be called a reason? Of course, this reason is really Zhang Yuxuan's idea. After crawling around in the chaotic wasteland for hundreds of years, I traveled to a relatively peaceful world. What about enjoying it? Chapter 9 Grade Issues. Zhang Huilin didn't ask her brother's reasons anymore, because now there was a more critical question. Score. Lord is indeed the best profession, but it also consumes the most resources among all professions. As for advanced resources, there are only so many. Therefore, those who have awakened lords must also take the special lord examination. Those who cannot pass the examination of the 5 major colleges can only guarantee that they will go to a second-rate school. Of course, other awakened people don't even have this guarantee. Brother, do you know how the Lord exam is scored? Henry Zhang shook his head. He was dozing off in class and didn't hear this part. The Lord's examination consists of 3 parts for a total of 100 points. The first part is to directly see which race the Lord is, and the total score is 10 points. If I remember correctly, the awakened race is human, and this item is 0 points. The second item is to convert the scores from the previous national exam, with a full score of 40 points. As for my brother's national exam scores, the converted scores into the Lord exam are only about 15 points. By the way, do you know the evaluation level of the Lord's starting mission? Zhang Yuxuan knew this and nodded. The opening task is a task that each Lord will perform immediately when entering the world for the first time. Generally, they are occupation type and enemy annihilation type. After completion, in addition to rewards, there will also be evaluation. Blue Star will give scores based on reviews. S level is 50 points, full score. A level 40 to 49 points. B level 30 to 39 points. C level 20 to 29 points. D grade 10 to 19 points. E level 0 to 9 points. It would be easy for me if I know. To put it bluntly, even if my brother gets full marks in the third item, he will only get 65 points due to the drag on the first 2 items. In addition, it is almost impossible for his own starting task evaluation to be S. Henry Zhang smiled when he heard his sister's analysis. The old girl has still grown up and can analyze problems by herself. Not as cute as before. Sister, indeed, even in the best-case scenario, I will only score 65 points. The passing line for the 5 major colleges is 70 points, and if you want to enter the top elite class, it is basically 90 points and above. But sister, brother, when did I say that I would take the regular route to get admitted to the Holy Fifth College? When she heard his words, Kelly Zhang was stunned. Aren't you going to take the conventional route? Are you going to take the high school awakening selection competition? But brother, haven't you always said that this competition is a game where the chosen ones compare their backgrounds? Just because I belittle it doesn't mean I won't participate. The high school awakened person selection competition is open to high school senior awakened students every year, and it is only a competition that they can sign up for. Then there will be a duel, which will be broadcast live nationwide. It is divided into 5 categories: warrior type, production type, spell type, auxiliary type, and lord. Of course, Zhang Yuxuan just wanted to sign up for the Lord's College competition. Because the champion of each competition has a privilege, that is, he can choose the university he attends at will, and he can directly enter the best class, and the school cannot refuse. This rule is protected by the laws of Xia State. Your brother and I not only want to participate, we also plan to win first place. First? That is, the champion? Zhang Huilin felt a little incredible. Brother, are you sure? Henry Zhang touched her head. Do you trust me, your brother? Zhang Huilin nodded immediately. After all, her brother was the only relative she could trust in the world. Certainly. Then just watch how your brother and I become the champion. Chapter 10 Registration Conditions. So brother, do you know the conditions for participating in the competition? Zhang Yuxuan knows this. Although Lord is the strongest profession, becoming a Lord is not easy. It requires passing a series of tests. Among them, the most important criterion for judging the strength of the early Lord is to complete the initial task of the Lord. Generally speaking, it takes more than 20 days for a Lord to complete the initial mission. Therefore, the normal registration for the Lord's College entrance examination is 30 days later. Awakeners need to take the evaluation of the initial mission and go to the college registration points in each city to register. This is a relatively normal route, but for some talented people, in order to prove their strength, they will participate in the selection competition. To participate in the selection competition, the awakened person must complete the Lord's opening mission within 7 days after awakening, and obtain at least an A-level evaluation. This is a great challenge, because in these short 7 days, you will either face powerful enemies or need to solve various complex problems. But only by passing such a test can one prove one's strength and be qualified to participate in the selection competition. I know, don't worry. Although Zhang Huilin didn't know how her brother could do it, since her brother said he had no problem, then it was no problem. By the way, brother, Lords have a special communication interface to add friends of other Lords. Let's add a friend. Okay. After speaking, Henry Zhang closed his eyes and recalled the Lord's information in his mind. ID 19283745, remember not to give it to anyone else. After all, Leslie Chung doesn't want a bunch of people bombarding his mailbox every day. Of course, I know this. Zhang Huilin still knew what her brother was thinking, and she had no intention of giving it to anyone else. At this time, the TV news began to broadcast this year's competition method. The voice of the TV news announcer was sonorous and powerful, echoing throughout the living room. Leslie Chung and Kelly Chung sat on the sofa, staring at the TV screen intently, listening to the announcer announcing this year's selection competition method. This year's Lord selection competition is a 2 vs 2 team duel. Both players in the championship group can choose their school freely. This sentence was like a bombshell, exploding in the hearts of Yuxuan Zhang and Kelly Zhang. A trace of surprise and confusion flashed in their eyes. Team duel? Zhang Yuxuan muttered to himself. The last time there was a team duel, it was more than 10 years ago. Kelly Zhang also frowned. She turned to look at Zhang Yuxuan, and Zhang Yuxuan also turned his head. "Brother, you can't find anyone else to be your teammate, right?" Zhang Kelly asked tentatively. Henry Zhang was silent for a while, then shook his head with a wry smile. "Definitely. How can others team up with me if they want me to die? So, little girl, you have to work hard to meet the registration standards." At night, Kelly Zhang busily shuttled through every corner of her home, her hands skillfully closing doors and windows to ensure the safety of her home. She carefully checked whether the door lock was secure, whether the natural gas pipeline was turned off, whether the faucet was dripping, and whether the home appliances were powered off. As if on an important mission. After completing these trivial matters, she breathed a sigh of relief. In order to meet the registration requirements as soon as possible, they have to devote themselves to the other world and do tasks these days, so they will not come back. Only in this way can they achieve their goals faster. Chapter 11 Twilight War Gang. Excluding special means, Blue Star Awakeners can travel through 2 times every day. They are 0 AM in Xia Kingdom and 12 noon in Xia Kingdom time respectively. There is a 12-hour time difference between the other world and Blue Star Xia Kingdom. In other words, Leslie Chung and Kelly Chung decided to time travel in the early hours of tonight, so after they time travel, it will be 12 noon in the other world. Of course, there seems to be no time difference within the other world. No matter where you are, the sun rises and sets at the same time. Well, stay safe, sister. You too, brother. After saying goodbye, the brother and sister closed their eyes. He confirmed in his mind that he was going to travel through time, and then as soon as 0 o'clock came, the brother and sister disappeared from this world. When Zhang Yuxuan opened his eyes, he knew that he had arrived in a different place. A desert without any grass. Zhang Yuxuan first chose to check the Lord panel. Faction, Dusk Warband. Faction Leader, Two-Faced Man, Tianxing, Jackie Chung's pseudonym. Race, United Chaos Warriors. Faction Traits. People of time travel, factions have unique buildings, warband upgrades, and chaos gift mechanisms. Warlock education, all mage heroes and mage lords in the faction gain the characteristic Essence Wind Mastery. Skywalking Chiefs, has a unique mechanism to recruit legendary heroes and troops. Ultimate Warrior, the initial level of all heroes and lords increases by 5. Chaos Warband, the tribute of the servant country is increased by 50%. Each servant country will receive 25 soul income every 10 days. What can I say? This panel is more biased towards Hammer 3 itself. Although I also stayed in medieval Warhammer with the full war system before. But gameplay wasn't as heavy as it is now. To give a simple example, during the medieval Warhammer era, the Dusk Warband was actually composed of a small number of System Lord hero troops and a large number of indigenous warbands. Now it feels like this Lord system is more biased towards games played in previous lives. However, these characteristics should be generated based on his performance in the chaotic wasteland in his previous life. Zhang Yuxuan looked at his Lord characteristics. Lord characteristics. The Lord's unit's combined arms experience gain increases by 50%. The Lord's troops unite with the Chaos Knights and Dusk Guards to obtain the characteristic Iron Shoes. The Lord's troops unite the Chosen Ones and the ambitious Champion Warriors to obtain the characteristic Charge Breaking the Formation. The cost of marking for all armies within the faction is reduced by 50%. No racial aversion when dealing with human races. Okay, confirmed. Sure enough, the characteristics are generated based on his performance in the previous life. When he was in medieval Warhammer, he mainly led integrated troops. The other troops are mainly composed of Nurgle-type troops and Tsench-type troops. This is actually almost the same as before when Sri Lanka played Hammer 3. Of course, this does not mean that the strength of the arms and characters can be used as a reference for the whole war. In fact, based on hundreds of years of experience in medieval Warhammers, the gap between the strength of the troops in the Hammer 3 game and the actual strength encountered is very large. Relatively speaking, the strength is close to that of the medieval Warhammer desktop arms. As for the strength balance of the medieval Warhammer desktop arms, it can only be described as a lump. The strong are strong, the weak are weak. The difference in strength between different classes of the same army is extremely terrifying. He has felt this. For example, in the Hammer 3 game, several teams of Norscan raiders surrounded and killed a team of Nurgle Chosen, and they were still able to kill them. And when he traveled to the medieval Warhammer world, he once had a team of Nurgle's Chosen Ones. When they were surrounded, they directly killed more than 3,000 marauders who surrounded them, and most of them became the souls of their axes. As for why it is most of them, it is because the predators escape too fast and Nurgle's Chosen cannot catch up. There is also a huge gap between different races of the same class of soldiers. For example, they are all militiamen in the game. The Zero spearmen and archers of the Sigma Empire can only be said to be weaker than the Zero bows and spears of the High Elves. But in the medieval Warhammer world, even if we don't talk about shooting level, Elf archers can defeat the Empire's spearmen in single combat. Chapter 12, Flag Officer, Brian. The strength of the military characters in the novel does not refer to the original version of Hammer 3, but refers to some background stories and the desktop military overhaul mod of Hammer 3. This is a data overhaul mod made by a Chinese boss based on desktop military data. Even when Zhang Yuxuan was checking the data, he did not forget to alert his surroundings. His intuition is extremely sharp and he can always detect subtle changes in the surrounding environment at the first time. Just like now, he felt a person with no malicious intent approaching him. Zhang Yuxuan turned around and saw that person. "Brian, you're here." This warrior named Brian is more than 2 meters tall and brings thunderous shock to ordinary people. He holds a huge two-handed hammer, as if he controls the majestic power between heaven and earth. The giant hammer shone coldly in the sunlight, as if it contained endless destructive power. He wears a full-body plate armor with green as the main tone and a small amount of gold decoration on it. He wears a horned helmet on his head, and the helmet is carved with evil patterns. What's even more striking is that the armor and helmet on his body are covered with rust. The rust is not due to the poor quality of the armor he wears, but because he is a follower of Nurgle, which is a sign of their faith. Moreover, there is always an uncomfortable atmosphere surrounding Brian. A large number of flies surrounded him, buzzing constantly, as if they were telling something. However, Brian had no reaction to this, as if these flies were just a part of his body. Moreover, pus continued to flow out from the gaps on his armor and helmet, covering his armor and helmet. The smell of these pus is pungent and nauseating. However, for Brian, these pus are the source of his strength. As a believer of Nurgle, Brian's body is suffering from severe disease all the time. These lesions gave him extraordinary powers. For Nurgle's followers, disease is not a curse, but a blessing, a power bestowed upon them by Nurgle. Brian slowly walked up to Yuxuan Zhang, his movements seemed solemn and majestic. He gently put down the heavy hammer in his hand, as if he had been relieved of a heavy responsibility. Then, he knelt down on one knee, lowered his head piously, and expressed his respect to Yuxuan Zhang. He carefully took out a military flag from a package. The magnificent sunset was painted on the military flag, which seemed to be the most gorgeous scene in the sky. General Brian raised his flag and said, "The flag is thrown here, my lord." His tone was full of determination and loyalty, as if he was saying, "I will protect you and serve you no matter where you are. Keep holding it, you are still my flag officer." Flag bearer, Brian, legendary Lord Nurgle hero, level 1. Faction, Twilight Warring States. Occupation, hammer-wielding warrior. Characteristics. Equipped with full-body armor. Melee expert. Armor-breaking and shield-breaking master. High-probability armor-piercing unit. Kill with one hit. Available mounts. Chaos Warhorse, unlocked at level 4. Rot Beast, unlocked at level 10. Toad Dragon, Swollen, unlocked at level 18. Artifact. Dusk Battle Banner, equipped. Starbreaker, equipped. Brian had already been loyal to Leslie Chung in the medieval Warhammer world. Brian is not a system hero recruited by Zhang Yuxuan, but a serious native of the ancient Warhammer. He has followed Zhang Yuxuan before he developed. He is the medieval native who has followed Zhang Yuxuan for the longest time and is deeply trusted. In order to reward him, Zhang Yuxuan specially recruited a toad dragon and gave it to him as a reward. This is the only toad dragon that Zhang Yuxuan has recruited. After all, he doesn't like this unit very much, so it would be better to recruit a big devil than to recruit this thing. Of course, Brian and some of his colleagues were often puzzled as to why this toad dragon was so clean. Nurgle standard clean. Chapter 13. Just give this small army? At this time, Zhang Yuxuan felt hundreds of soldiers approaching him again. He knew that this was his initial force. Most of them are common Chaos Raiders. It is also the Hyunyong in turn jokingly called by the players of Hammer 3 in the previous life, and it is the beginning of most Hunyong high-level cavalry. Chaos Raiders, 160 players per team. Current number, 4 teams. In the medieval Warhammer world, Chaos Raiders were mainly composed of Norscans, and they were often the majority of a Chaos army. These brutal barbarians wield heavy axes and roar towards their enemies in chaotic formations. In the barbaric society of Norse, only the strong and capable can succeed, while those who are weak have long been eliminated and killed. Chaos Raiders tend to be dark-looking, large, muscular, and hairy. Self-improved and ferocious, these warriors are devoted to war and fight to the death for the glory of plunder. Appearing on the left wing of the Predators, there were 2 teams of Predator Riders. Predator Riders, 60 people per team. Quantity, 2 teams. Predator Riders differ from Predators in that they are primarily made up of bronze-skinned Kurgans. In the army of Chaos, they are often the first pioneer cavalry to dye their blades red. When the enemy was defeated and fled before the attack of the Chaos army without any suspense, it was these marauders who were responsible for hunting them down. In addition to these 2 low-level cavalry, there are also high-level cavalry appearing around Zhang Yuxuan. Nurgle's Chosen, heavy weapons 120 people per team. Quantity, 1 team. The Chosen Ones are among the Chaos Warriors who have won more favor from the evil gods than their colleagues. They are called the Chosen Ones, and their bodies are filled with unclean power and drive unclean gifts. This is proof that they have won the appreciation of the evil gods for their evil deeds. The Chosen Ones can often destabilize the enemy's front line by approaching on the battlefield. They raise their swords and kill the enemies in an orderly manner. And Nurgle's Chosen One highlights the gift of a loving father. The helmet and armor, which are based on green, are stained with rust. Their severely diseased bodies make them more bloated than their peers. The body is always exuding a stench and decay that is unbearable for mortals. In addition to Nurgle's Chosen Ones, there is also a team of high-level cavalry. Chaos Knights of Tsench, 60 people per team. Quantity, 1 team. Chaos Knights are feared across the old world and beyond, as ruthless butchers who can turn the tide of a battle with a single charge. Men and horses were all wrapped in thick, blessed armor. The knights' greaves have sharp blades, ready to cut the enemy's flesh and blood at any time. The Chaos Knights who attack in formation can be as powerful as the iron fist of the evil god. The Chaos Knight of Tsench can be said to be the most handsome of all Chaos Knights. They wear electroplated blue mirror armor, and the decoration of golden lines shines in the sun, highlighting his extraordinary identity. Whether it's armor, helmets, or shields, they are all decorated with metal bird's eyes, which seems to give them some mysterious power. They are always surrounded by a pure magical energy, which is sometimes surging and sometimes as gentle as the wind, as if it is the source of their strength. Zhang Yuxuan's initial troops totaled 960 people. This amount can be said to be Tianhu's start for the Lord. You know, most lords start with only 200 or 300 people. Just like goblins, a race that is purely human, there is a chance that you can get about 1,000 troops at the beginning. Regarding this, Zhang Yuxuan just wanted to say, why do you give so few troops? You know, even during ET, most of the wealth accumulated over hundreds of years was lost. But before he could perform the teleportation ritual and escape, there were still thousands of Chosen Ones and Chaos Knights. So this is the result now. Chapter 14. Prepare to fight. After gathering the army and adding the friend request sent by his sister, Zhang Yuxuan led the army and set off to the north. I have to say that the Lord panel is the aspect, and this panel comes with a map. After closing your eyes, you can view it directly in your mind. Of course, there is a distance limit. Any place that is too far away is a group of black fog. Now he knew that a few kilometers north of him there was a small village belonging to an unknown barbarian force. This small village is nothing special to other people, but to Yuxuanzhang, it will be very important. Because this small village was actually recognized as the Chaos Fortress. For the Chaos Warriors camp, the Chaos Fortress is an extremely important existence. Military, economic and development are all in urgent need. For the Chaos Warriors camp, it's okay if you don't want other cities, but you must get the Chaos Fortress. A distance of several kilometers would not take long for the Chaos Army to reach. Of course, out of politeness, Zhang Yuxuan asked a predator rider to go and declare a challenge in advance. Anyway, within a few minutes, they would not have time to build defenses. Of course, I don't know what eloquence that rider has. Let that barbarian tribe choose to go out of the village to fight in the wild. Leslie Chung's formation is actually very traditional. 4 teams of marauders were stretched out in a long strip and arranged in the middle, 2 teams of marauder riders were arranged on the left wing, Tsench Chaos Knights were arranged on the right wing, and the heavy Nurgle Gods Chosen were arranged behind the marauders. After Zhang Yuxuan arranged his front, he did not immediately launch a charge. It's about estimating the opponent's combat effectiveness. Although it has a total warlike system whether in the medieval Warhammer world or in the other world, there is a fundamental problem. These 2 worlds are not data worlds. It is a real, different world. For the natives, there are no levels, health bars, etc. These time travelers only have it themselves, and it is for reference only. Take the medieval Warhammer as an example. There is a huge gap between the upper and lower limits of the same arms type among natives. Some trolls can be unparalleled in the army, and some trolls can be killed by soldiers alone. ACHA is also a Chaos Lord, in theory, but can his combat effectiveness be the same as that of a popular Chaos Lord? The Mount of Phoenix King Kael'dir I, Madresner, is a legendary Glory Star Dragon that has been seen by the old saints. It is speculated to be the Glory Star Dragon, but it is not stated clearly. Then this ancient dragon failed to defeat Malekith's Mount Sully, a young black dragon that was not born long, in the air battle. His father, Ingdranil, was completely disgraced. Therefore, there is a consensus among the time travelers. That is the troops recruited by the system, which is the average level of the natives of the same military type. He won't be too strong, nor will he be boastful. As for the combat effectiveness of the medieval Warhammer natives on the opposite side, you can only estimate it yourself. And this blue star is similar to the other world, there is no level health bar. Certification of combat effectiveness requires special examinations. This exam is similar to various special operation certificates and levels of work in previous lives. Written test plus practical test to determine the grade. Or feel it yourself. But it is estimated that the fighting power of a group of barbarian tribes is only easy for Zhang Yuxuan. In just a few minutes, Zhang Yuxuan estimated the combat effectiveness of this group of barbaric tribes. Chapter 15 Instant Kill. Soon, Zhang Yuxuan estimated the combat effectiveness of these barbarian tribes by observing their gathering, actions, stature, etc. Good eyesight is good. First of all, most people in the barbarian tribe are a bit short in stature. After all, this time it complies with the law of conservation of energy. Can a person who doesn't have enough food or clothing to keep him warm every day grow tendons? What about coaxing ghosts? What? Why can a chaotic wasteland with little food and clothing breed so many predators? This is all the power of the 4 gods. These relatively short warriors basically have no armor and a variety of weapons, and some even only have wooden sticks. In addition, according to reports from raider riders, this tribe has no cavalry. There were about 200 archers, but they all seem to be holding short bows of poor quality. There are also some female soldiers in the crowd, holding large shields and spears. These should be shield girls. If you insist on saying that the fighting power inside is quite good, it is estimated that there are only dozens of strong men standing in the center. They should be warriors raised by the collective strength of the tribe, with certain metal armor and weapons made of metal. Of course, it is also a mixture of various things. After all, it is a barbaric tribe, so don't ask too much. The number of people seems to be quite large, more than 1,000 people, but judging from the combat power, I think we can win if we just go up to A. Henry Zhang saw one of the strongest warriors among the group of warriors walking out, then turned around to face the others and started talking. Of course, Zhang Yuxuan couldn't understand what was specifically said, but he could guess that he was lecturing. Then this should be the tribal chief of this tribe. Henry Zhang sneered, and the chief showed a trace of disdain in his eyes. He knew that although the magic system of this world was different from that of the medieval Warhammer world, they were essentially the use of a kind of energy. He took a deep breath and began to mobilize the magical energy around him that was not very abundant. As he breathed, the magical energy in the air began to surge and gradually gathered around him. He felt the flow of these energies, like water flow, constantly changing shapes under his control. He closed his eyes gently and felt the fluctuations of energy with his heart, then suddenly opened his eyes and twisted his fingers. Several blue demon flame missiles were instantly shot out from his fingertips, and they flew towards the tribal chief with the sound of howling wind. These missiles burned in the sky, emitting dazzling light, as if they were the brightest stars in the night sky. The tribal chief witnessed this sudden attack. His face instantly turned as pale as paper, and his heart was filled with panic and despair. He tried to dodge, but it was meaningless, because the initial spell of Tsench's magic, Blue Flame of Tsench, comes with tracking. Several missiles were like messengers of death, accurately following his figure and hitting him mercilessly. This demonic magic flame was so powerful that with a deafening explosion, the blue demonic flames instantly swallowed him up and burned him to ashes. The entire tribe was shocked by this sudden attack and fell into dead silence. That's it? That's it? I got up and shot in seconds. Zhang Yuxuan still estimated that the opponent was stronger. After all, he didn't even overload the spell. It seems that this chief still does not have the potential to be a fire-resistant king. It's like this, don't think about anything else, just go up to A. All troops. Attack. Chapter 16 Charge. During the hundreds of years of medieval warhammers, Zhang Yuxuan and other time travelers evaluated various weapons, especially individual weapons. For example, this team of Chaos Knights of Tsench are sword and shield cavalry. But in fact, Zhang Yuxuan has not recruited sword and shield knights for hundreds of years. He always uses lances and Chaos Knights. Because in Hammer 3, the lance version only increased the charge bonus, but greatly reduced the melee defense, resulting in a loss in attributes. As a result, the game basically uses the sword and shield Chaos Knight, and basically does not use the lance version. But in the medieval world, it was actually tested. The sword and shield version and the lance version recruited by the system have the same weapon skills and reaction speed. Moreover, it has a stronger ability to break formations, can be understood as a charge bonus, and more importantly, its killing effect on heavily armored units is much stronger than that of a sword and shield. I don't know why CA wants to position the lance as a low armor penetrating unit. A group of military strategists fainted in the toilet. Of course, the killing effect of this heavily armored unit is not a specific value, but the result of the termination of all traversers. If the sword and shield's expected damage to a heavily armored unit is 1. The expected value of one-handed blunt weapons, two-handed swords, one-handed spears, and one-handed halberds is about 1.5. The expected value of two-handed halberds and two-handed blunt weapons is about 2. The expected values for two-handed super long guns/rifles and heavy lances/horse rifles are around 2.5. As for long-range individual soldiers, gunpowder generally has high damage expectations for heavy armor, except for those inferior pistols. Crossbows generally have low damage expectations for heavy armor, except for a few crossbowmen such as dragon crossbows, black sharp repeating crossbows, Sisters of Avalon, and rangers. So why give him a team of sword and shield Chaos Knights? Give him a unit that hasn't been recruited in hundreds of years. I can't figure it out, but the impact is not big. A group of barbaric troops will not have any armor. Henry Zhang was too lazy to spend money to replace their weapons. Seeing the tribe's most powerful chieftain being instantly killed by his opponent, the tribe's warriors suddenly fell into panic. The leader they originally trusted, the one who was unbeatable in battle, fell so fragilely at the feet of the enemy. Barbarian tribes have always been almost fanatical in their pursuit of power. They fear the strong, and the chief of a barbarian tribe must be the most capable of fighting. Now, this powerful man who they usually dare not look directly at was defeated so easily by the enemy, which shocked them extremely. The morale of the tribe dropped to the bottom at this moment, as if a disaster was about to strike. "Are we really going to win?" one tribe member asked in a trembling voice. However, before he finished speaking, he was killed by the chief's deputy with a sword. The deputy's eyes were cold and ruthless. He held up the bloody sword and declared loudly, "The chief is dead, then I will be the new chief. Our home and our property are behind us. Whoever dares to talk nonsense again, this is what will happen." His words were like a cold hammer, hitting the hearts of every tribe member so hard that they did not dare to question him at all. Of course, in fact, he himself was not sure. When he saw the enemy soldiers holding metal axes, and the tendons on their bodies looked extremely strong in the sun, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He knew that the strength of these warriors was by no means comparable to that of ordinary people, and every slash of these warriors could cause fatal damage. He began to doubt his own judgment and whether he could really lead the tribe to win this battle. However, he also understands that retreating is not an option. Only by moving forward can it be possible to change the situation of the war. However, he did not see the Chosen One. After all, the Chosen One was standing in the back row, and he could not see it due to the terrain. Chapter 17 Easily. Fire the arrow. Following the new chief's order, the archers of the tribe immediately took action. They drew their bows and arrows and fired freely at the enemy. As for why not volley? Well, this is just a barbarian tribe. Do you expect the barbarians to know what orders and prohibitions are? Therefore, they could not form a uniform volley. They all fought individually and shot as they pleased. When they saw arrows flying towards them like rain, the predators reacted quickly and raised their strong shields, blocking the arrows easily. They dismissed these attacks as if they were as insignificant as the breeze blowing on their face. In their eyes, compared with the long-range troops of the Sigma Empire, the archers of these tribes are like children's toys and have no power at all. The marauders charged and laughed at the tribal archers. Their eyes revealed a kind of contempt and disdain, as if to say, "Is this all your strength? How ridiculous!" Although most of the arrows were skillfully deflected by the marauders, there were still a few unlucky ones who were struck by arrows. Some of them were shot in vital parts and fell to the ground, losing their combat effectiveness. However, what is surprising is that the other predators who were not hit in the vital points did not seem to be affected much. They still charged forward bravely, as if the arrows did not hit them. They waved the weapons in their hands and let out a deafening roar, as if they wanted to destroy all obstacles that blocked their progress. Soon, the looters hit the human wall like a violent storm. They wielded heavy one-handed axes, made deafening roars, and launched a desperate fight with the enemy on the opposite side. In their eyes, they fought as if they were under the gaze of the gods. Only those warriors who are brave and fearless and dare to face death can be favored and protected by the gods, while cowards will only be abandoned. The power of darkness. A plunderer shouted loudly, and his battle axe chopped off the enemy's head with thunderous force. Blood spurted out and dyed his body red. "Fight with blood, brothers." His voice was as passionate as a war drum, inspiring his companions to rush into the enemy's position. For predators, battle is their carnival, a stage for them to release their wild nature and show their bravery. "We bring destruction. Destroy them." They shouted in unison, as if they were going to crush the whole world under their feet. "Knead them. Torture them. Conquer or die." Their eyes flashed with fanatical light, as if they had seen the dawn of victory. The predators roared on the battlefield, waving their weapons, their eyes full of arrogance and confidence. For them, this group of enemies is too weak. Fighting with them cannot even be called fighting, but can only be called enjoying the fun of life. They defeated the enemy easily, as if they were playing, enjoying the pleasure and excitement brought by the battle. On the entire front, only the dozens of enemy warriors could barely compete with the marauders. However, what can dozens of warriors do? Although their strength is powerful, facing the tide of plunderers, they can only slow down the defeat slightly. Their resistance was like a futile struggle, and in the end they could not change the fate of defeat. Chapter 18. It makes sense for a mage to swing a sword, right? Zhang Yuxuan stood on the battlefield, his eyes like torches, scanning the enemy in front of him. He knew that the battle situation had been determined and the enemy's defeat was only a matter of time. However, he decided to speed up. He closed his eyes again and began to gather magical energy. However, what is completely different this time is that when the magical energy is gathered, the energy is full of corruption and viruses. He opened his eyes suddenly and released this magical energy full of evil aura. The next moment, Nurgle's initial spell, Plague Miasma, enveloped the enemy. The enemies were horrified to find that the surrounding air was filled with a disgusting stench of decay, as if countless corpses were rotting and growing. The stench made them feel a strong nausea, and they covered their mouths and noses one after another, but they were still unable to resist the unpleasant smell and continued to vomit. They could only endure the stench while trying their best to dodge the predators' fierce attacks. Their movements became slow and clumsy, as if their hands and feet were bound by invisible shackles. As for killing the enemy? Sorry, they can't even protect themselves now. They can only vomit and barely block while trying their best, and they can't even think about attacking the predators. Zhang Yuxuan had just released the Plague Miasma, and then began to gather another kind of magical energy. His hands danced rapidly and he muttered words. The air around him began to change. A pure and evilly charming purple energy gradually gathered around him. This energy is completely different from the previous Plague Miasma. It exudes an intoxicating atmosphere that seems to be able to tempt people's souls to sink into it. Zhang Yuxuan's eyes became deep and blurred, and he was ready to use this energy to bring greater disaster to the enemy. Immediately, the three-tailed whip of the Dark Prince suddenly appeared on the battlefield, as if it was pulled out of nothingness. The long whip is like a giant black dragon, dancing in the air, carrying an aura of destruction. The next moment, the long whip suddenly struck the enemy warriors from the air. A deafening crash sounded, and a large number of strong men were knocked away and fell heavily to the ground, with dust flying everywhere. Their bodies were covered with scars from being whipped. This blow was like a gentle kiss from the Dark Prince, allowing the enemy to taste his wonderful rage and destructive power. After releasing the whip of Slaanesh, Zhang Yuxuan did not choose to continue casting spells, but quickly adjusted his breathing, holding his huge two-handed sword with both hands, preparing to deal with the next battle in close combat. Although he is a mage, his melee combat strength cannot be underestimated. Even if his current hand-to-hand combat ability is not as good as in his heyday, he can fight ACHA to a close evenly without using any artifacts, which is still a Chaos Lord level existence. He possesses amazing weapon skills, strength, and speed in close combat. Facing the siege of those barbarians, he was like a furious beast, shuttling through the crowd. Every time he swung his sword, he could take away the lives of several enemies, and the enemies would not have complete corpses. His swordsmanship was as violent as a violent storm, making the enemy unable to resist and could only tremble under his sword. Of course, Zhang Yuxuan's loyal subordinate Brian has not been idle either. He has been involved in close combat long before Zhang Yuxuan. Chapter 19. A simple battle. Brian also has amazing melee strength in battle. He wields a heavy hammer with both hands, slamming into the enemy like a violent storm. Every swing was accompanied by a deafening impact sound, and the enemy was smashed to pieces with blood and flesh flying everywhere, and their limbs were broken. His figure shuttles across the battlefield, and every time he appears in front of the enemy, it means death is coming. His two-handed giant hammer became a nightmare for his enemies, leaving them with nowhere to escape but to tremble in Brian's rage. And as a believer of Nurgle, Brian naturally has the exclusive passive of a Nurgle believer, Cloud of Flies. According to Yuxuan Zhang's observation in the medieval Warhammer world, the actual performance of Cloud of Flies is far better than that in the Warhammer 3 game. When Brian fell into close combat, these flies seemed to be driven by some mysterious force. They flew around Brian and made an annoying buzzing sound. Cloud of Flies can improve Brian's reaction speed and blocking, increases melee defense. Whenever an enemy attack is about to hit Brian, these flies will fly quickly, interfering with the enemy's attack trajectory and creating an opportunity for Brian to counterattack. In addition, Cloud of Flies can also cause continuous damage to enemies around Brian, burn blood in a small area, and affect combat effectiveness, debuff in a small area. These flies will constantly bite the skin and clothing of their enemies, making them feel uncomfortable and irritated. In this state, the enemy's combat effectiveness will be greatly reduced. And Zhang Yuxuan had already killed the enemy in just a few dozen seconds. His figure shuttled on the battlefield, and every time he appeared in front of the enemy, it meant a fatal blow. The new chief tried to defeat Zhang Yuxuan, but his attack was so weak under Zhang Yuxuan's sword that Zhang Yuxuan chopped him into 2 pieces in just a few seconds. This scene completely destroyed the enemy's morale, and they began to break up and flee in all directions. Escape from this apocalypse. Run for your life. The enemy's cries spread like a plague, and they fled into the city in terror, their hearts filled with fear and despair. Their footsteps were chaotic and disorderly, as if driven forward by invisible fear. Their eyes were full of fear and uneasiness, for fear of being overtaken. They fled back to the city, thinking they could find a glimmer of safety, but found an even more desperate scene. The predator riders had already entered the city in a roundabout way and were looting wantonly, with greedy and cruel smiles on their faces. These predator riders really couldn't believe that this group of enemies was so stupid that they didn't leave anyone to guard other passages into the city, allowing them to enter the city so easily. There are predator riders in front of them and predators behind them. They have been surrounded and have nowhere to escape. Their hearts are filled with despair and fear. They know that their doom has come, and they can only watch their destiny being dominated by these predators. Isn't this too easy? Zhang Yuxuan couldn't help but sigh with emotion. After destroying thousands of enemy troops, we only lost less than 50 people. The advantage lies with me. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Then soon, his smile solidified. Because after the system prompted him to win, his evaluation was slightly advantageous. WDNMD has the upper hand. Why don't you just win a bloody battle? Chapter 20 The Road to Promotion. Chapter 20 The Road to Promotion. Next, the plunderers began their job, plundering. They poured into this barbarian town like a tide, with greed shining in everyone's eyes. They roamed the towns and cities, grabbing loot with impunity. The laughter and cheers of the marauders echoed through the town. While the predators were chasing and plundering, Zhang Yuxuan calmly issued new orders. He asked his chosen ones and chaos knights to spread out and stand guard at various entrances and exits of the town to prevent enemies from escaping. These chosen ones and chaos knights have been given great power by the evil god. But similarly, worldly desires such as wine, honey, barbecue, women and other enjoyments have nothing to do with them. For them, serving their master is everything. Of course, there is another reason. Just don't let these high-level troops steal the experience of low-level troops. The warriors of the Chaos tribe follow a cruel rule. That is the road to promotion. The weak will be eliminated, and the strong will defeat the strong and become stronger. In fact, it is War Gang Upgrade plus Character Upgrade of Chuzhen Hanyong. It's just that the upgrades in Zhang Yuxuan's hands are more complete. Each of his chosen ones and Chaos Knights has superior units. For example, a high-level chosen of Tsench can be upgraded to a Clawbreaker, and a high-level Chaos Knight of Slainish can be upgraded to a Serpent Knight. Moreover, these top-level cavalry have a very low probability of special events. You can choose to sacrifice that team of troops in exchange for the capacity of the Divine Hero or Chaos Warlock to be increased by 1. Of course, the probability of this event happening is very low. Moreover, the level requirements for upgrading his unit's warband are very different from those of Hammer 3. Reaver Riders require level 9 to upgrade to Chaos Knights, and Reavers require level 7 to upgrade to Chaos Warriors. However, it only takes level 3 to upgrade the Chaos Warrior to the Chosen One and Chaos Knight. Therefore, He now wants the Marauders to gain more experience and not be robbed by the Chosen Ones and Chaos Knights. At this time, the Lord panel reminds that the city has been conquered. Please choose. 1. Occupy. 2. Loot. 3. Destruction. Needless to say, this is the Chaos Fortress and must be occupied. The next moment, the view of the Lord map increases to the entire province where this city is located. And the territory function in the Lord panel is unlocked, and since this is the first city, this city is defaulted as the faction capital. And it is directly a second-level city. Zhang Yuxuan first changed his name to Twilight Castle and then checked the territory page. Sure enough, just as Zhang Yuxuan guessed, his territory system is completely different from other lords. According to the information he checked when he was in school, the Lord's territory panel is similar to past life construction games, such as Manor Lord. Take photos of buildings yourself, increase population, and attract external population. And the people in this world are also living people, and they can also build their own towns. These buildings built by the natives of the world on the territory of the awakened Lord are also considered the Lord's own buildings. It can recruit troops and develop directly, as long as the planning is good enough to attract the natives of the other world. The development of the territory in reality directly affects the development of the territory on the Lord panel. But Zhang Yuxuan's territory panel is completely copied from Chuzhen's town panel. The two have direct and only indirect effects. For example, if there is a large indigenous population in the city, development will be done on the panel. But even if there is not a single living person in the city, as long as the development bonus on the board is high, the population surplus on the board will continue to grow upwards, and the capital will still rise quickly. You are listening to it in Eugene Light Novels.